In 1920, desperate investors lined the streets of Boston, clutching their life savings and begging one man to take their money. They believed Charles Ponzi was a financial genius who could double their investment in just 90 days. Instead, he was orchestrating the most infamous fraud in American history, a scam so devastating that it would forever bear his name. Before diving in, hit subscribe and comment what other financial scams you'd like to hear about. This is how a penniless Italian immigrant became America's original con artist. The making of a fraudster. Charles Ponzi was born in Parma, Italy, on March 3, 1882, into a family that had once known wealth and prestige. His ancestors had been successful merchants and public officials, but by the time of his birth, the family fortune had crumbled. This fall from grace haunted young Ponzi, filling him with bitterness and an obsessive desire to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. When Ponzi inherited a modest sum after his father's death, his mother hoped he would use it for education at a prestigious university. Ponzi had different plans. At the University of Rome, he treated his studies as a 4-year vacation, burning through his inheritance on expensive clothes, lavish dinners, and nights at the opera with wealthy friends. He lived far beyond his means, desperately trying to maintain the illusion that he belonged among the elite. The fantasy couldn't last forever. His money ran out, his grades suffered, and he faced the humiliating reality of failure. Too proud to accept menial work from his uncle, Ponzi saw only one escape: America, the land of opportunity where fortunes were made and dreams came true. The American Nightmare. In 1903, Ponzi arrived in Boston aboard the SS Vancouver with just $2.50 in his pocket. The rest gambled away during the voyage. The America he found was nothing like his dreams. With no money and no connections, he was forced into the very work he'd considered beneath him back in Italy. For years, Ponzi drifted along the East Coast, taking whatever jobs he could find: dishwasher, factory worker, grocery clerk, insurance salesman, sign painter. But his arrogance and dishonest nature made him unemployable. He was repeatedly fired for cheating customers or simply walking away when the work became too demanding. Often, he found himself sleeping in parks and begging for food, a far cry from his aristocratic aspirations. The Canadian education. In 1907, Ponzi moved to Montreal, hoping Canada would prove more welcoming. His multilingual abilities landed him a job at Banco Zerossi, a bank serving Italian immigrants. Finally, it seemed his fortunes were changing. He was promoted to manager and began to understand how the financial world operated. But Ponzi's real education came from watching his boss, Luigi Zerossi, run a classic rob Peter to pay Paul scheme. Zerossi was using deposits from new customers to pay impossibly high interest rates to existing ones, 6% when the standard rate was 3%. The scheme worked temporarily, creating the illusion of incredible profits. When authorities began investigating suspicious money transfers, Zerossi filled a suitcase with cash and fled to Mexico, leaving Ponzi and other employees to face the consequences. But instead of learning from this disaster, Ponzi saw an opportunity. Before leaving Montreal, he forged a check for $423.58 from the Canadian Warehousing Company. The forgery was clumsy and easily detected by bank tellers. Ponzi was sentenced to 3 years in prison, though he served only 2. Upon release, his criminal education continued when he got involved in smuggling Italian immigrants across the border, another crime that landed him in federal prison for 2 more years. A second chance. After his second release, Ponzi wandered aimlessly until he found himself back in Boston, working as a clerk for the J.R. Poole Company. For once, he seemed to be succeeding legitimately. He excelled at his job, earned promotions, and fell deeply in love with 21-year-old Rose Necco. When they married in 1918, Ponzi felt both happiness and inadequacy. Rose was content with their simple life, but Ponzi craved the wealth and status he'd never achieved. His grandiose dreams led him to quit his stable job and pursue increasingly desperate business ventures. First, he tried to save his father-in-law's failing fruit business. It went bankrupt. Then he started his own import-export company. It failed spectacularly. Finally, he conceived of publishing a trade magazine called The Trader's Guide, convinced it would generate massive advertising revenue. This venture collapsed before it even began, leaving Ponzi deeper in debt and facing rejection from every bank in Boston. The fatal discovery. In August 1919, a letter from Spain changed everything. The sender had included an international reply coupon, IRC, a prepaid voucher that could be exchanged for postage stamps in any country belonging to the Universal Postal Union. As Ponzi examined this small slip of paper, he realized he'd found what seemed like his golden opportunity. Post-World War I inflation had created currency imbalances across Europe. Theoretically, Ponzi could buy IRCs in Italy, where the lira was weak, ship them to America, exchange them for stamps, sell the stamps, and profit from the difference. It was called arbitrage, and it was perfectly legal, a sound investment tactic used for centuries. On paper, the plan seemed brilliant. In reality, the profits were microscopic, and shipping costs would eliminate any gains. There literally weren't enough IRCs in the entire world to sustain the operation Ponzi was imagining. But he refused to abandon the idea. Instead, he turned it into history's most notorious fraud. The birth of the Ponzi scheme. In January 1920, Ponzi launched Securities Exchange Company, promising 50% returns in 45 days or 100% in 90 days. He claimed to have agents buying IRCs across Europe, refusing to share trade secrets. Smart investors avoided him, recognizing impossible promises. But Ponzi targeted financially naive people. Immigrants, small business owners, desperate families dreaming of quick wealth. His first month brought 18 investors and $1,800. Paying them promptly with new investor money, word spread rapidly. Crowds gathered outside his office. Many mortgaged homes or invested life savings. By July 1920, Ponzi collected over $250,000 daily. He bought mansions, expensive cars, diamond pins. The Boston Post called him a genius, adding credibility. At peak, he'd taken $15 million, equivalent to $200 million today. The house of cards collapses. Success breeds scrutiny, and Ponzi's incredible returns inevitably attracted attention from financial experts. The same Boston Post that had praised him began investigating his operation. They brought in Clarence Barron, president of Dow Jones and manager of the Wall Street Journal. Barron's analysis was devastating. For Ponzi to deliver on his promises, he would need 160 million IRCs. Only 27,000 existed worldwide. The numbers simply didn't add up. In July 1920, the Post published Barron's conclusions on the front page, declaring Ponzi a fraud. Then Ponzi made a fatal error, hiring publicist William McMasters. Unlike Ponzi, McMasters was honest and soon realized his client was running a complete fraud. With insider access to Ponzi's records, McMasters wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning exposé. Ponzi is a financial idiot. He can hardly even add. He sits with his feet on the desk, smoking expensive cigars in a diamond holder and talking complete gibberish about postal coupons. The scheme collapsed instantly. Several banks failed and tens of thousands of people lost their life savings. Ponzi was indicted on 86 counts of mail fraud, but managed to plea bargain down to a single charge, receiving just 5 years in federal prison. The final chapter. Released after 3.5 years, Ponzi immediately attempted another scam in Florida, selling worthless swamp land with promises of 200% returns in 60 days. This time, his reputation preceded him. Few invested, and he was quickly exposed again. Attempting to flee to Italy disguised as a sailor, Ponzi was recognized and arrested in New Orleans. He received another 7 years in prison, emerging as a broken man. His wife had divorced him, his family had abandoned him, and his legendary charm had vanished. Ponzi spent his remaining years in poverty, first in Italy, then in Brazil, where he taught languages and worked odd jobs. In 1948, nearly blind and forgotten by the world, he suffered a heart attack that left him permanently weakened. On January 18, 1949, Charles Ponzi died alone in a charity hospital in Rio de Janeiro. The man who had once controlled millions of dollars was buried in a pauper's grave, with only $75 to his name. The enduring legacy. While Ponzi didn't invent the scheme that bears his name, he perfected it and executed it on an unprecedented scale. His methods became the template for countless future fraudsters, from Bernie Madoff's $65 billion swindle to modern cryptocurrency scams. The Ponzi scheme endures because it exploits fundamental human weaknesses: greed, the desire for easy money, and the willingness to believe in financial miracles. Today, his name serves as a permanent warning that if an investment seems too good to be true, it almost certainly is. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you heard of any modern scams that remind you of Ponzi's scheme? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true crime stories from history. Thanks for watching.